It's our 2026 Minnesota Twins preview up next on Fantasy Baseball Today. Welcome to On the Beat, a mini team preview series we're doing here at Fantasy Baseball Today. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Bobby Nightengale, who covers the Twins for the Minnesota Star Tribune. Make sure to give him a follow on X at Nightingale Jr. And let's get into the Twins offseason. We'll just start there. Hasn't been too much going on. They brought in Derek Shelton as their manager. That was the first move. They signed Josh Bell to a one-year deal. We know that there's been a lot of talks, trade rumors involving their pitchers. Obviously, lots of talent there. Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez. Nothing has happened to this point. Those names have stayed put. What's your current feel for this 2026 Twins team?
Yeah, I think they're just going to kind of stand pat for the most part. I mean, they cut a lot of payroll at last year's trade deadline. Obviously, they traded 11 players at the deadline, so it felt like, okay, they're going to go into a full-blown rebuild. But kind of the state of the American League Central, I feel like they feel like, hey, if a lot of things turn right, I mean, if some young hitters bounce back, if some young pitchers take a step forward, you could mess around and find your way to like 500, and maybe that's good enough to fight for a division title. I mean, Cleveland wasn't very good for half the year last year and ended up winning the division with a hot second half. So I think they feel like, that there's a chance there. If Detroit stumbles, if they end up trading Tarek Skubal, the division's wide open. So, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, and they were kind of the obvious trade candidates, but it does feel like they're pretty settled in terms of, okay, we're going to keep those guys. We're going to keep Byron Buxton. And, if they struggle out of the gate, those guys will be probably traded at the trade deadline this upcoming July. But until then, I think they just view it as let's run it back and see what happens.
The Twins very much so feel like a variance team, right? Where, like, if their guys can stay healthy, they have a lot of really talented players. If Buxton can stay on the field, Royce Lewis, Pablo Lopez, all these guys, we know that they're talented, right? So they do have variance in that way where, if they stay healthy, we can perhaps see a big upside outcome from this Minnesota Twins team. But, of course, we haven't seen that often enough from the Minnesota Twins. We have some big fantasy questions here in Minnesota. Luke Keaschall came up last season, and he impressed in the 49 games that he played. Hit 302, 382 on base percentage, 14 steals, and that last part, the speed, is very intriguing for us in fantasy. So how many steals could you see from Luke Keaschall if he stays healthy for a full season? Is this a guy where you could just see them letting him run wild in 2026?
Yeah, I think that's probably the plan. I mean, the guy's a gamer. He played in, I think 49 games last year and got on base in 41 or 42 of them. So he's just one of those guys. I mean, he's a ball player. They want to let him run loose. I think he has more power than he showed last year. I know his exit velocity numbers aren't great, but I do think, he's had some arm injuries in the past 2 years. I do think he's going to hit for a little bit more power than he's shown. And I also think he's going to run a lot. He's a guy that he is pretty quick. I mean, he's not a guy that sprint speed. He's going to be 90th percentile or anything like that, but he uses it well on the bases. He's aggressive. He likes to run, and he's young. So I do think they're going to give him the green light as much as possible. If you look at the second half, I mean, the Twins at the trade around August 1st were the worst base running team in baseball, barely tried to steal, barely tried to do anything. In the last 2 months, they ran wild. And now they have a new manager, Derek Shelton, but I do think they do want to that's the way we can produce some offense, is just running wild and see what happens there. Instead of, they're not going to have a ton of power hitters in the lineup. They signed Josh Bell. They have a couple other guys, but I do think they're going to rely on their speed a little bit more. And that's where Luke Keaschall, I think 20 plus steals, I think is a reasonable over-under.
Again, to your point, we saw Royce Lewis down the stretch ran a bunch as well. So that's another name. We know he's athletic enough, and Buxton had a bunch of steals last year too. So they really could make some noise on the base paths between Buxton and Keishel and Royce Lewis and get these guys running again. We would love to have that for fantasy. So definitely rooting for that outcome here in 2026. In fantasy baseball, we're also looking for saves, right? We're trying to figure out who's the closer on every team, and we're left here in this Twins bullpen. They've got a few names that potentially they could lean on there. Do you think Derek Shelton will have a set closer? If so, who do you think that would be? If not, do you think it's just kind of a committee approach that he's going with?
I think it'll be a committee approach. I mean, I think he'd have a set closer if he had anyone good enough to be a set closer. But I'm just not sure there's that person's on the roster yet. And if they do, like free agency, I expect they'll sign some free agent relievers, but I don't expect someone that'll come in and be, okay, this is our obvious closer like Joan Duran was, or even when Derek Shelton was in Pittsburgh, David Bednar. So I do think they're kind of stuck in there. I think I was trying to look at the bullpen. I mean, it's so in flux. I mean, they have so many young guys that they could kind of go any direction. I think Justin Topa is probably the one guy I look at early in the season, being like, okay, he's a veteran. Cole Sands is probably their best reliever, but he's so good against lefties and righties. And I know pitching coach Pete Mackey likes to use him, that he's probably still going to be in that like sixth, seventh inning role where he's always going to face the top of the lineup, but it's going to be a little bit earlier than the ninth inning. So I think Justin Topa, just being the veteran guy, he's probably going to get the first crack, but I'd be on the lookout. I mean, they have some young relievers and some young starters that'll get moved to the bullpen that wouldn't be shocked if those guys kind of ascended pretty quickly into a back end role.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be back right after this.
This isn't just combat. It's cinema.
Ready or not, here I come. Let's go! Are you not entertained?
The new home of UFC, Paramount Plus.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball Today, our team preview series here, and we are taking a look at the Minnesota Twins with Bobby Nightengale Jr., and I asked you for a sleeper, and you provided a pitcher that I am still very interested in as well. Who is that?
Yeah, Zebby Matthews. I think, anytime he had a good start last year, it was almost like everyone was giddy in the clubhouse being like, this guy's a future ace. This guy has the potential. And it just hasn't clicked together. I mean, his velocity went up last year by like 2 miles an hour. Like all the ingredients are there. He throws a ton of pitches. And it's kind of weird. His splits are kind of like first time through the orders is worst, which usually it's the other way where first time through the batting order for a pitcher, they're really good. And then after that, second time, third time, they get worse. He's actually the opposite. So it's not really a stuff thing, in my opinion. It's more just he's just got to get a little bit tighter earlier in games and get a better feel for his pitches. He got crushed by lefties last year. So I do think he kind of has the ingredients where, yeah, he gets a lot of strikeouts. He doesn't walk very many guys. He's going to get opportunities. I could see him kind of ascending to like that number 3 starter. I mean, the stuff's there behind Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. Those two are clearly the best in the rotation, but I could see Zebby falling into the third, especially if his stuff keeps ticking up the way it has. I mean, he went from throwing 95 2 years ago to throwing 99, and that's a huge difference for a starting pitcher.
Yeah, the surface level numbers were obviously quite bad for Zebby Matthews, 5.56 ERA, 149 WHIP, but the underlying stuff, nearly 10K per 9, 18% K- walk rate, 12.8% swinging strike rate, all very impressive. I do wonder a little bit about his pitch mix. It feels like he kind of needs to figure out the arsenal a little bit. While he's throwing the fastball harder, it got hit extremely hard last year, so I wonder if maybe moving off that fastball just a little bit and maybe mixing in the secondaries more is something that can help Zebby Matthews. Have you heard anything about the pitch mix or him working with the pitching coaches this offseason to maybe develop a different plan heading into next season?
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I think they're trying to get guys off the fastball a little bit more. So yeah, I think you're right that they'll probably see a little bit more off speed. He did add a sinker like in his last couple starts. I don't know how much StatCast picked it up, but he did start throwing it at the very end just to try it out and see if it helped. So I wouldn't be surprised if he came into spring and that's a pitch that he goes up to a little bit more just to get more ground balls and quicker outs. But yeah, I mean the surface level stats, they weren't good last year. That's probably why he's kind of he's not a lock to be in the rotation to start the year. If he has a bad spring training, he'll probably start at AAA. But he has the stuff. And you talk to guys in the clubhouse, you talk to other pitchers. I remember Danny Coulomb just kept repeating it over and over. He's like, this guy's a future ace if he can figure it out. So I think he's one of those guys that under the radar. I mean, if things click, it could click pretty quickly for him.
And your breakout is one that I've always been interested in. We're always looking for, late round power in fantasy baseball, and we really just need to see him do it over the course of a full season. So who's your pick as the breakout here for the Minnesota Twins?
Yeah, I like Matt Walner. He had a kind of a weird season last year. He hit 22 homers, but it never really came with runners on base. I think he finished with just barely over 40 RBI. He's atrocious with runners in scoring position. So I do think he's kind of due for some positive regression there where he's going to have a little bit of a step forward. But yeah, I mean, he's a good power hitter. He rakes against right-handed pitching. He had a hole in his swing that was pretty obvious. I mean, he really struggled against fastballs in the top of the strike zone. So now he has a full offseason to work on it and should be able to shore that up a little bit. But I think the opportunity's there. He's going to have a regular outfield job. And two, I mean, the power. I don't expect him to be one of those guys that steals a ton of bases, but could easily see him turning into a 30-homer hitter. Just if he can kind of fix that hole in his swing, and the RBI should come. I mean, he can't be any worse with runners in scoring position, so that should be something where his RBIs tick up.
Yeah, one thing I really liked from his game last year is he cut the strikeout rate from 36% the year prior to 29% here in 2025. Some of the StatCast metrics did come down. I think that's clearly correlated, him focusing on, striking out less and maybe not swinging for the fences as much. But we know he has incredible power, tons of pulled fly balls. It's a recipe to, it's a recipe for power if he could just make enough contact here. Do you think he is a strict platoon, Matt Walner, or will it start that way? And if he hits well, he can earn more playing time against lefties. How do you see his playing time playing out throughout the course of the season?
I think he's got a chance to be an everyday right fielder. They have a lot of lefty corner outfielder, left-handed hitting corner outfielders, and he's one of them. They don't really have many right-handed guys. So I think he'll be given the leash to do it. He was actually decent against lefties last year. Statistically, in his career, he hasn't been, but last year it ticked up. So I think he'll be given an opportunity. I mean, if an Austin Martin or someone steals at bats for him, maybe that happens. But I think just defensively he has to improve a little bit. But like you said, he cut his strikeout rate. The power's there. They don't really have many power hitters, so they're going to need him in the lineup, whether it's against lefties or righties. And even if he comes off the bench, against a left-handed starter, I'd expect him to be the first guy off, with guys on base as a pinch hitter.
All right, big thanks there to Bobby Nightengale Jr., who covers the Twins for the Minnesota Star Tribune. Make sure to give him a follow on X at Nightengale Jr., also on Blue Sky, same username, Nightengale Jr. there. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to our On the Beat team preview series, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.